And welcome to another episode of AWS Howdy Partner. It's me. I'm A.M. Grabelny. I'm here with one of my good friends. I never know which way to point, but it's this way. Yeah, it's this way. It's my good buddy Andrew Park. I am a dev advocate here at AWS. Andrew is a partner solutions architect. You'll learn more about us as the show goes on. But we operate this show called AWS Howdy Partner twice a week, generally, Mondays and Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific. But this is a very special time for AWS. It's reInvent. So we're doing a very special version of Howdy Partner, which we'll talk more about the format after we get to our special guest. Today, our partner is going to be nOps. John and Randy from nOps have joined us. Let's give them just a moment to introduce themselves. You want to start us off, John? Tell us about yourself.
Hey, my name is John Ray. I'm the Director of Technical Operations here at nOps. I actually came to the company about 10 months ago now, and I actually came over from a consulting company, and I was really excited because I really saw how valuable this tool could be for helping folks to kind of build cloud practices around and how you could really quickly do a lot of pre-sales activities and some very interesting things with it. And I was actually in the process of starting to craft building a practice around it when JT, our CEO and founder, snagged me and brought me over here. So I'm excited to be here.
There you go. Randy, tell us about yourself.
Hey, everybody. Randy Newell. I head up marketing CMO for nOps and business development also, and actually have a point as the AWS Alliance Manager as well. Been here about 3 years and working with AWS throughout that time. Really excited what we have to show you today. Thanks for the opportunity.
Nice. Andrew, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what do we do here on Howdy Partner? What is Howdy Partner?
Yeah, so kind of like the title says, Howdy Partner is a way for us to highlight a lot of the cool things that our partners are doing with the AWS Cloud. And so, what you'll see today with nOps are a few cool tools that you can leverage to both optimize and get deeper visibility into your AWS workload. So with that said, super excited to see what the nOps folks have to show us today.
Yeah, we're getting a hands-on demo today from the nOps crew alongside, little explanation of what nOps is and how it benefits you as you work in AWS and your own AWS accounts. But it's reInvent season, so we've got a very special episode today. Joining us in the second half of our episode will be Scott Weber, an APN ambassador. We'll get to learn more about what that program is, how that program operates, what it means for Scott, and more about Scott's views on reInvent and the things that have happened so far. But I want to turn it over to Randy first, right? Randy, you're going to set the stage for us, I think, and tell us a little bit about nOps. Everyone who's watching, please get your questions over to us. We will gladly interrupt John and Randy. Andrew and I will totally just, get right up into their flow, really throw them off and ask your questions. So if as Randy is showing us and teaching us about nOps, and then when John shows us nOps hands-on, if you have questions, please drop them in Twitch chat. Andrew and I are listening and watching. So let's kick it off, Randy. I think you're already sharing your screen, aren't you?
Okay, yeah. Howdy, everybody. So Howdy Partner. This is nOps and Reimagining Cloud Management. I'm Randy Newell. John Ray is joining me, and I have just a few slides to kind of set up what nOps is, a little bit about it. We're going to spend most of the time in the product, so just hold on for a second, and we'll get right to the product. What we're going to do in this, that was interesting. What we're going to do in the agenda today, a little bit about what is nOps, what's well architected, and then a demo where John will cover nOps and its context for well architected. A little bit of background on nOps. It started with change. nOps, basically came out of DevOps service delivery teams at nClouds, which is an AWS premier consulting partner. And the consultants were essentially looking for a way to manage dynamic change. And if you're working with AWS today, your environment changes continuously all the time. And when they couldn't find something that would meet their needs, we created at that time early versions of what has now become nOps. And what nOps does extremely well is inform you on change in the context of change. So today, nOps is a cloud management and intelligence platform for AWS. It allows you to monitor, assess, and manage AWS changes. And interestingly, it is built aligned with the AWS well-architected framework. So it's informing you not just about AWS changes, but their context for cost, for security, reliability, performance, and operational excellence. Wow, those sound like the pillars of the AWS well-architected framework. So a little bit about nOps and AWS. nOps is an advanced technology partner. nOps has a cloud management tools competency, is a marketplace seller, is part of ISV Accelerate. It is a leading third-party tool for AWS well-architected reviews. It is one of the tools that gets recommended by the AWS well-architected team. And probably most important to us, we have a very high net promoter score, a 90. And that means that people like using this product and it performs well. So a little bit about nOps in the context of well-architected. If you are just learning about well-architected and you're wondering what Randy is talking about, AWS published the AWS well-architected framework a few years ago and started with a white paper. That white paper has turned into hands-on labs. It's turned into tools. It's turned into a large ecosystem of partners who use the well-architected framework to drive well-architected reviews and other assessments of an AWS environment. What it enables you to do is follow all of the best practices that AWS solution architects have garnered over the years, more than a decade of delivering on public cloud. Importantly, allows you to evaluate your decisions, trade-offs, optimization, better informed decisions. That's what well-architected really allows you to do and gives you this consistent approach to both customers and partners for evaluating your architecture. Where is it in and out of compliance with these best practices and guidelines from the well-architected framework? And it was interesting, we did a webinar a month or so ago with Matt Yanshishin, who at the time was a director of solutions architecture. He's gone on to another role within AWS. And interestingly, he observed that well-architected is really for cloud what Agile is for software development, giving you this concept of and context for measurement, for documentation, and so forth for cloud. So why is well-architected important to you? This is a way that you can identify HRIs, high-risk issues in your AWS environment. It's the context with which you can optimize, and it's always about optimization. There are trade-offs that happen, whether you're cost optimizing, building performance and reliability. This is the context that you can use. So if you want to build secure, high-performing, resilient infrastructure, these are the benchmarks and best practices that you can utilize. And you can maintain compliance across these pillars of the AWS well-architected framework utilizing nOps. So we've been able to get some tremendous outcomes using nOps in the context of well-architected reviews and managing AWS environments generally. Typical cost optimization of 18 to 50%. This is tremendous, and this is typical. One client who is Uber saved a healthy 6 figures in the first 30 days that they used the product. This is significant savings. In the context of security, one client improved their security compliance by 75%, while another one was using nOps to expedite their ISO compliance. There's awesome features and functionality here, chargebacks at a tremendously granular level that takes advantage of containerization, that takes advantage of shared resources, that can look as deeply as a given database query to understand the context and charge associated with it, and anomaly detection. So this is an exciting product. We're going to see it in just a second with John. And there are some great case studies. If you go to the nOps site, there are both customer case studies, and in the partner network, you'll find partner case studies as well. Here are just a few of the snapshots: Agentology on Riva, 6Connects, and of course the Uber case study as well. There's a webinar that we did in collaboration with AWS and Uber that goes through in detail the way that they are able to take their cost out of their environment. So when you look at this, nOps is the only cloud management platform that is built specifically for AWS and aligned directly with the AWS well-architected framework. You'll see in the infrastructure and the way the product is built, it aligns directly with the AWS well-architected framework. It's proven. We get, again, typically 18 to 50% cost savings. It is fast. You'll see as John gets us into the product, the speed with which the product performs and how quickly you can get it set up as a SaaS offering, as an agentless SaaS offering. And hundreds of assessments, hundreds of well-architected reviews that have been done with nOps. So that's what I wanted to go through for right now, just to give you a general context. There's some awesome information on the nOps site, but I want to go over to John to get into the product. John?
Yeah, Randy, if I could just take a moment, just maybe summarize what you just, that was a lot of information. So it seems like, would it be a fair assessment to say that the product is very much aligned to, hey, you just did this well-architected review, or you're looking to do a well-architected review, and we're going to actually take care of that for you and show you all kinds of ways to improve based off of the pillars in the well-architected framework. Is that at the heart of what nOps does for us?
Yeah, there's a number of things that it does extremely well. One of the things that's really exciting about it is automated discovery. Right, so you can run nOps and identify the gaps in your infrastructure aligned directly with the pillars of the well-architected framework. You see dashboards, we'll get into the product in just a second, that represent the pillars, and you basically have drill down capabilities. So you can look at summary information. How are we doing on cost in a given region versus last week? I see an anomaly. I want to drill all the way down to the server level to see who launched that server and why it's running 83% ahead of last week. That agility within the product is there, but you're also provided that information about where you're out of compliance with a well-architected framework through that automated discovery. That's tremendous productivity and a tremendous gain in kind of bringing smarts to the table to actually do that and apply those rules automatically. What we're also seeing and what partners like a lot is the remediation plans that come out of it are immediate, and they're fact-based, right? So you're talking about impacting your infrastructure, and you're talking directly about where you're in and out of compliance. So if you're seeing thousands of zombie instances, if you're seeing lack of utilization, if you're seeing users with resources out in public subnet without MFA, those are going to be immediately identified, and that becomes very real issues that you can look at from a remediation perspective.
Like having an automated Andrew in your account at all times.
Having an automated Andrew
exactly.
in your account.
It's intended to make
Andrew
and other essays very productive.
I actually have a question. So I could totally see this tool being like super, super helpful for folks that need to adhere to compliance standards in like healthcare and life sciences or like financial services. Do you guys see a lot of customers in those spaces using this tool and finding a lot of success with it?
We do, and we've built out similar lenses for HIPAA, for SOC 2, awesome. And for CIS. And we've also given the ability to build out custom rules as well. So if you're in a particular industry or a particular organization that needs to apply its own set of rules, you have the ability to build that.
Oh, so I could literally go and write my own policies to cater towards my specific workload.
Yep.
Yeah. So
and John's going to give us some.
Back end, it's all. Yeah, in the back end, it's all in an elastic index, right? So there are two things that we do differently than I think a lot of other tools. One is that well-architected as a compliance standard permeates the entire product. It's not an option. There's not like one dashboard that shows well-architected. It's an always-on thing in our product. And then because we expose the index, and I'll show in just a minute here, you can write your own queries to the Elastic backend. And so you can say, something like type equals EBS and encrypted equals false, for instance, and return every single unencrypted EBS volume in your environment. So we try to offer that power up to folks so that they can really get an idea of what's going on in their environment. Hence the idea of like cost intelligence, right? Instead of just cost management.
Let's take a look, John. What do you think? It's always easier to show than tell, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I think I can manage that.
Okay.
All right, here's the obligatory question.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Hold on.
Boom.
Twitch can't yet, but now they can.
There we go.
There we are.
All right. So what we're looking at here is the account level view of the product when we log in. So let's talk real quick. What do we mean when we say cost intelligence? So most products will say, hey, we're a cost management tool, right? We're going to show you resources and how much they cost and that sort of thing. nOps is a cost intelligence tool. And what we mean by that is because we index all of the things that we get. So we get CloudTrail information, we're getting your cost data, we're getting instance metadata, VPC metadata, all these sorts of things, and it's all indexed. Because we get that, we can allow you to, like Randy said, really drill down into something and see the correlation for things. So we can look at a CloudTrail event and see how much that CloudTrail event and what happened in it actually cost you at any point in time. And we can link out to different things and show you tags and groups and all this kind of stuff. So when you kind of first log into the product, we'll talk briefly about kind of the product as a whole, and then kind of the journey that we're seeing our customers on. So when you first log in, you get this kind of these dashboards views of things. So we have like an accounts level view, for instance, where we can see our total spend history and go into any particular account and say, I want to see the details on this, like what resources live inside of this account, what operations are happening inside of this account, right? What are the usage types and that sort of thing. So we can get really detailed, really granular views on things. And so, and this is helpful to folks who want to see kind of this big picture AWS account level view. You can think like right after folks migrate something to the cloud, they always ask two questions. They go, how much does it really cost, right? Not how much did whatever tool I ran tell me it was going to cost. What did that consultant tell me it was going to cost, right? How much does it really cost now that it's in AWS and running? And then they go, and was it built correctly? Did I build this in a manner that is going to be sustainable in the future? I was reading, I can't remember which article I was reading, but something like 65% of all IT decisions are not being made by IT personnel anymore. They're being made by finance. They're being made by managers and directors. They're making these decisions, and nOps provides them with a way to actually get real data here, right, and really understand what infrastructure they are building affects cost in their environments. And so nOps seeks to answer both the questions, right? What does it cost, and did I build it correctly, through correlation of cost across all resources, right? And having the well-architected framework just permeate the entire product. So so we have like an accounts level view here. We can get really specific, like if I want to look at, hey, I want to see the breakdown by managed service instead, so I can see what is Elasticsearch costing me, what is my load balancing costing me, that sort of thing. And you can even get down to like the usage type or operations view. You can look at like every single resource in my environment, right? So you might step into, if you're a sysadmin and you step into a brand new AWS environment you've never seen before, like getting an inventory of that and figuring out what's actually there is kind of a pain. And so we try to make that as painless as possible by indexing all this information for you. So you can do something like say, hey, show me things like tagged prod or named prod, right? And so you can just search the index and you can see, oh, look, there's all this stuff named prod. I can look for things between certain dates. So this is the first way we expose the index is by this bar on the left-hand side. So these are all kind of pre-done filters for you. So data between certain date ranges, right? Resources launched on or after or before a certain date. So you might go into an environment and say something like, hey, I'd really like to see every resource that was launched after, we implemented the new Terraform or whatever, right? The new CloudFormation templates we put into place, we did some Lambda stuff, and I want to see every resource that's been launched after that, or every resource that is in a particular account, or tagged in a certain way. And this is where it gets really interesting. So nOps supports tags, both pulling your AWS tags out, but also a concept we call meta tagging, which allows you to write a query and tag all resources that are returned in that query with a meta tag. And then that meta tag can be used to recontextualize all these dashboards and reports and that sort of thing. So we expose the index that way. It's kind of the first way. The second way is by allowing you to literally search it. So, right, I type prod, I get everything tagged prod, named prod, that sort of thing. The other thing we do is we let you get a little bit more complex. So you see these kind of custom rules or custom queries that we have here. So we can actually look at a report of your entire environment and say something like type equals EBS, for instance, and get every single EBS volume in your environment. And you can start to see how well architected permeates the product, because we're immediately surfacing issues that you might have with just these EBS volumes that I've returned in this particular query. Since I know a bunch of these probably aren't encrypted, and that's why well architected is upset, I can also say something like and encrypted equals false. And now I get a list of all unencrypted EBS volumes in my environment. So you can start to see how being able to use this, and then I can save this, right? I can actually save this as a rule. So, and I can say this is a security issue, for instance. Whoops, just kidding. Is it gonna camel case me? Okay, there we go. So now if I wanted to, yeah, right.
Very C#
Live demos never work. So now if I go into this environment and say that's something I always look for, right? Unencrypted volumes, I can come in and just click this now. I don't have to remember the query, and anybody who is using the tool can use this. So you might imagine that one of your more technically savvy folk might write a series of custom queries or something like that are always going to kind of be available. Like we always want to look at these things, maybe during stand up or something like that. And you can just save these queries off, and they just kind of make it really easy for you to see kind of what's going on inside of your AWS environment. So that's when we say cost intelligence, that's what we mean. Yes, we show you budgets. Yes, we show you your cost for a particular region or usage types. Yes, you can come in and see a list of all the tags in your environment and what are they costing and kind of what are your 1 day, 1 week, 1 month changes around things. And so you can see this stuff, but maybe this isn't the data that you want to see. Maybe you want to see it in a different way. And so you can build custom dashboards and write custom queries so that you can kind of be the citizen cloud financial manager, if you will, right? Cloud financial management got added to the well-architected framework not too long ago. And in the spirit of DevOps and in the spirit of being able to shift left, what we want to be able to do is provide people the ability to make informed decisions, right? If over half of IT decisions are being made by people who aren't necessarily users of AWS, then we need to be able to present the data to them in a way that is useful, right, to them. Yeah. And so we try to do that by giving you that access.
John, I was actually just having a conversation like this the other day, just maybe last week, actually. I've been reading this book. It's an O'Reilly book. I cited it in the other conversation I had too. I'll have to go look up the author again. But it's called, the longer title escapes me, but the shorter title is essentially FinOps, which is kind of like in the same vein as this DevOps movement, right? Like DevOps, DevSecOps. They're touting the same thing, with FinOps being, for a long time, it was just accounting that needed to care about how much stuff costs, right? But now, more than ever, especially with cloud, actually, everybody should be caring about what the stuff costs at the end of the day. And everybody should be involved in these conversations. Is that what, Randy and John, I'll pose this question to you both, is that what you're seeing with your customers as well, that they're having more of these conversations across the board and not just in a silo in accounting? Or what are you all seeing with your customers?
Yeah, the answer is yes, absolutely. And where it's really quite noticeable is in a few areas. So, for example, well-architected reviews, right, where we've literally participated in hundreds of these, and it used to be an architectural discussion only. Right, and you'd see your solutions architects at the table and some DevOps managers and so forth, and increasingly, and this is a credit to AWS, is the AWS environment is an infrastructure is looked at as a business enabler, right? It's about agility, it's about how you deliver innovation in the end, and so when you start to talk about a well-architected review that's looking at cost optimization, that's looking at security, the people sitting at the table now, whether it's virtually now, during our current environment, or whether it predated that when we were doing a lot of well-architected reviews, sitting around an actual table, you see the CFO come in, right? And now you're having a bigger business discussion about the value of the infrastructure, right? You have a CISO that's sitting at the table and so forth. So you're kind of seeing that scope creep of who really is participating in this. So that's one place where we see it, kind of all the time. I guess the other place I'd look at it is the context and the value in which people are telling us they're using nOps and what they're using it for, right? And there's some great quotes. I would just encourage people, if they come away from this session even mildly interested, is go over to the nOps site and walk through the webinar that we did with Uber and AWS and nOps, and it's a great story about cost takeout, but it puts into context the value that these guys have in the product and the way that they're using it, because they literally are providing input into the engineering, into the DevOps teams and so forth, and a lot of it's financially driven. It's kind of echoing what John's talking about, which is kind of everybody needs to be oriented about cost going forward, right? It's not just something that we'll catch up with it. There's some responsibility that says I actually need to understand whether this Athena query that I've created is throwing off $20,000 worth of cost every time we run this query because somebody didn't write it correctly and it's pulling massive amounts of data back and forth, right? I mean, if you need to have a tool that allows you to get to that level of granularity to understand where that cost is coming from. Right?
John, I see you pulling up some Redshift stuff in the background there too. You want to talk us through what you're I know you've got limited time.
Yeah, I was just kind of. I tend to start playing around a little bit. So as Randy was talking, and absolutely, we this idea that cost is the domain of finance only is just. It's completely passé at this point in time. Like if you are building cloud infrastructure and you don't care about how much your cloud infrastructure costs, I question whether or not you're actually, good at your job basically at this point in time. Like it matters. IT's not a cost center anymore. It's not someplace you just sink money, right? It's a driver for the business. And as such, you have to treat it that way. You wouldn't just go buy a bunch of hardware back in the day without conferring with finance and understanding the implications of that. So why do we think it should be any different with cloud infrastructure, right? Why do we think it should be any different for a developer to just say, hey, I'm just going to spin up a whole bunch of stuff and not care what it costs? We used to place the onus on the cloud sysadmins, and we used to say, hey, cloud sysadmin, put into place restrictions so that our developers can't, overspend. Right. But that doesn't make any sense because cost should be part of the architecture. It should matter when you're building things, as part of your optimization strategy for your application. And so hiding that information from the developers or hiding it from or like restricting them in some way as opposed to enabling them by providing them the data just doesn't make a lot of sense anymore in this day and age. Right. I mean, we saw how rapidly things can change and how much having agility matters. The old statement was the big fish eats the small fish, right? And the new one is the fast fish eats the slow fish. And that couldn't be, more true. And if you want to be fast, if you want to be agile, then you need to care about cost because that's going to handicap you in some ways if you're not careful. So what I was playing with actually is I was just going through, I was looking at this Redshift cluster that we have out there and kind of what we're doing with it. And you can see we have a lot of data about this. So we can start to see things like what VPC it's in, what it's tagged with. So there's a lot of tests in this. So I'm running a test Redshift cluster. It looks like I have a compliance issue with this Redshift cluster. So this is like a suboptimal utilization on this cluster anyway. So I'm wondering, like, why do I even have it? And that's the cool thing about nOps, is that nOps is a conversation starter in a lot of ways. We can see things, and anybody can see these things, right? Finance can see these things. IT can see these things. The new person you just hired who needs to get used to your AWS environment can see these things and ask questions like, why is this here? Why do we need 18 NAT gateways? Do we really need that many NAT gateways? Like, do you not see the cost here? Could we re-architect, right? Could we maybe do something different? And so we like to be able to have this conversation, right? And we can see actually because we had a conversation about this node, we can see our costs started to drop over 6 months because we were starting to ask questions about this node. The other thing that's interesting here is I mentioned before that we're a read-only tool, and if not, I should have. We don't actually have access to change anything in your AWS environment, and so we provide kind of two ways to do that. So let's say you actually wanted to go affect change to this cluster. If you're a smaller organization, maybe you don't have a large change management group or something like that, you can actually just jump out to the console directly. So for all of these resources, we create this URL so that you can jump straight into your AWS console and actually mess with it. And the other thing is we integrate with third-party ticketing systems. So a lot of people have their change management world built up around something like a Jira or ServiceNow or something like that. And so instead of having the tool immediately affect change, right, because in a lot of ways that breaks a lot of policy, it breaks a lot of things that are related to DevOps in general, we want to integrate with your existing process, right, and keep everybody kind of informed in that way. So.
Yeah, it sounds like you all are trying to meet people in the tools that they're already using, right? Do you have? Can you tell me a little more about what integrations you all have with some of these tool sets? You mentioned Jira.
So we have a Jira integration, Slack. Obviously, everybody loves Slack.
Yeah,
we do the integrations there. Slack Ops, right? Email is a thing. So you can actually, we're going to be enabling webhooks here in not too much longer. So the idea is that we have this kind of notifications center, right, where you can actually have notifications for individual things. Like you can subscribe to individual tags or keys or rules and then have those kind of emailed out to you or sent to Slack. And Slack can watch these things, right? So you can have every time there's a violation against, one of 10 rules, you can have Slack start to do things if you have a Slack bot or something like that. When we enable the webhook stuff, you'll actually be able to call out and call it to Jenkins or whatever to start your CI stuff going. And then we have a standard kind of like PagerDuty as well. Like if you want to have notifications go out to PagerDuty on certain things, you can do that as well. We're always looking for organizations to kind of partner with that we think will bring value to our customers. And we want to be able to integrate into like you said, into your existing environment. We want to meet you where you're at, especially in enterprise organizations. If you are adding a new tool, and of course, for me, coming from a consulting background, this is something that I always harped on, is I will never add a new tool to your stack that doesn't either integrate with or replace something that's in your environment, right? If I come to you and tell you, hey, use my tool, but also you have to redo your entire world around my tool, then why? Nobody wants to do that, right?
We would be remiss, Andrew and I. We've got a friend on a similar or parallel team named Mo, who does a lot of work with EventBridge. I actually even see it in Twitch chat. If you wait long enough and you talk about webhooks or event-driven notification integrations, it'll pop up. Young is asking, is there a possible EventBridge integration in the future as well for nOps? And if so, Mo's we need to get you talking to Mo.
He's listening. He's waiting.
Yeah, we're always looking to be able to integrate to new and cool services that AWS has that we think, if, like, for instance, EventBridge is a really, really cool tool, and it's really enables organizations to do a lot of really cool things. Event-driven architecture is kind of coming back around a little bit with the way that containers and microservices and SOA kind of crept back on us. General event-driven architecture is very effective at certain types of tasks. And so, yeah, we'd love to be able to have an integration there and be able to, call out and integrate with EventBridge.
All right, Mo, if you're listening. So I see you pulled up nOps rules now too, and this is something we haven't talked about yet. Tell us more about this.
Yeah, so when we were looking at resources and other various things like that, these security violations or compliance issues pop up. And so you can actually just go into this section called nOps rules and see a list of well-architected rules and violations of those rules. And there's two things that you can do with that. So one is, as Randy was mentioning, we can actually drill straight down into these, and we can see which particular resource is in violation of this. So publicly accessible EBS snapshots. Nobody go access this, please. We can drill in and we can see, like, where is it at? What's the ARN on it? What's the what tags? I can see kind of what environment was. This cloud formation, logical ID, I can see all this. I can jump out to the resource on the console and go, hey, this needs to be fixed, right? Or I can do my typical change management thing. I can also, if you have AWS config enabled, right, I actually pull your config history. So I can actually tell you, like, who launched it, when did they launch it, that sort of thing. In addition, you can I'll show you our CloudTrail viewer here in a second. In addition, you can go find the actual event in CloudTrail. So you can do that from here, and then you can also view this kind of change management type of view. So several of the dashboards we have this change management view, and I'll jump out to our larger view here because more things in it makes it look cooler. So we can actually see, like, a day-by-day map of, like, what's going on, what's happening in my environment, why is this happening. So I can see on Friday, that we got this unencrypted S3 bucket from the S3 workshop that was going on, or excuse me, the QuickSites workshop that was going on. And so I can jump into it real quick and say, oh my gosh, we need to fix this. What is this? Who did this? What region does this live in? What compliance issues does this have, right? And start to affect change there. So we get this kind of well-architected permeates the product, and these things appear in lots of places. So no matter where you're looking, you're going to see if you're in violation and well-architected. But you can also just jump into this rules section and see kind of what rules are there, what am I violating, and that sort of thing, to try to get a handle, right, on what's going on inside of your environment. The other thing that you can do is you can take all these rules and roll them up into a kind of a dashboard here. So this is our well-architected review report. This is the first kind of iteration of well-architected in the product, was being able to have this list of rules and then generate this report. And sorry, I think I ran this for every single demo account that I have. And so you can get an idea of, like, what's going on, what is the criticality of it. You can make comments on it. You can actually work from here. You can also use our indexing on the left-hand side to kind of drill down and say, I really only care about maybe US East 2 because of whatever reason. So I can now down select and recontextualize all these types of things around US East 2 instead of seeing kind of the big picture view of everything. We can also download this, so I can actually pull this down as a deliverable, like, hey, I'm being audited by someone. I need something to show them that I am, in fact, well architected and not in bad shape anywhere. And then we can add kind of custom questions to this as well. So maybe you're having an auditor come in, and that auditor always asks a particular question that's really not covered off on by any of this automated discovery. And so you can add that question into here and have somebody respond to it, so that when you generate the report to send to your auditor, like, that question is covered off on. So those kind of three pieces, right? This kind of dashboard look at things, and the the rules and how well architected permeates the entire product. That was kind of our first look at well architected, right? How can we help people be well architected?
I have to say, you weren't kidding when you said well architected was really at the heart of this thing. You all have really embodied a lot of the pillars. It's amazing to see how much is built right into the product. That's cool. So for anyone just joining us, we've actually had some people joining and asking what is nOps. I gave a really quick summary in chat. nOps, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, or fill in any blanks, or you two are the nOps experts, not me. But I said that it's a read-only tool for monitoring your AWS accounts for cost optimization, compliance, and other well-architected framework pillars, right? And it gives you insights into what's out of compliance with those types of settings. How did I do? How would you rate my?
That was pretty good. Yeah,
pretty good?
I would add some dimension, right? Which we monitoring for sure.
From 1 to pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay. I got a Larry David, pretty good.
Pretty good. I mean, in addition to monitoring, there's an assessment aspect to it. It certainly does facilitate, the remediation and management as well. And I think spot on with kind of the alignment. Cost is certainly probably the most popular. It's where people have paid a lot of attention, over the last 9 months or so that we've been going through our latest business climate. But the important thing is, I think, that it doesn't stop at cost, right? It's paying attention to all of the pillars of the well-architected framework.
Totally. All right. So, Andrew, do you want to give everybody who's just joined us a rundown of what Howdy Partner is? Where are you watching? What have you tuned into if you've stumbled upon us?
Yeah. For everyone that just is tuning in, this is AWS Howdy Partner. This is a show where we like to highlight, cool things our partners are doing with AWS. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of wish I knew about this tool when I was talking to a lot of other customers and partners over this past year, because it seems like this tool does everything for you. This is a great tool, and definitely encourage everyone to check it out, because the level of depth that this tool goes into, it's remarkable. That's for sure. So
you'd have made Andrew's job a lot easier, it sounds like.
100% easier.
John, do you want to talk about workload concept?
Yeah, actually, I'd like to talk about two things. One is our CloudTrail viewer real quick, and then I do want to touch on workloads and kind of why we think workloads is really important. So first, if you've ever had to go through your CloudTrail events, I'm sorry, but it can be kind of a pain to have to go do that. And so one of the things that we try to let folks do is what we call root cost analysis, right? And we take all of your CloudTrail events and we correlate those to cost numbers. And so we allow you to use the same indexing method. So we can down select on account, for instance, or a particular username or event type. So for instance, I can see let me see all the create roles, for instance, that have been happening. So in case I have somebody creating random IAM roles in my environment, right, I can actually not only go see those individual resources and see who's creating these sorts of things from a CloudTrail perspective, but then I can also correlate to costs as well. So I might see, for instance, these database snapshot changes, right, and what's going on and what are those actually costing me. And I can drill in and see a lot of information about it, about the individual call itself, but I can also look at like related history. Like here's all the CreateDB snapshots that have been happening over the course of time in my environment. So that's one of the other cool things that we do.
Is this the Git blame of AWS? Is this?
It can be. You can
like
misuse it in that way.
Of AWS, of like, who cost me all of this money, and how do I go find who did this?
How do I find out who did this? Yeah, in a way, you can do that, right? You can do the Git blame thing here. Absolutely. We highly recommend you not making that public, but go for it.
Okay.
You always get the new guys who don't know what Git blame is, and that's the best thing. It's like Git blame, and they're like, "What is this? I didn't do it. It's not my fault."
That's right. Yeah, I just meant a public shaming of your developers, which you should never do, actually. These should be
only private shaming.
Yeah, exactly. I'm only joking a little bit. Honestly, this should not be a shameful thing at all. We should actually kind of celebrate, I think, going
We
and
should.
finding these things and fixing them. And, that's what failure is all about. If you don't learn from it, and if it's not a safe place to fail, then you probably will never learn. Anyway.
We've been on well-architected reviews where we're projecting in a conference room, and you actually can see the engineers shutting down instances that maybe should have been shut down a few weeks ago.
Hilarious. Oh man.
Yeah.
But it's all for good, right? That's all healthy.
Totally. Sorry, John, I totally ruined your flow there. Keep going.
No. Get blame AM. Like, how do I do that?
That's right. We can go find the timestamp when I actually brought that up.
Right. We can get that. We can make that happen. So that's just one of the cool things about, I think, doing root cause analysis and being able to really kind of group and go through your CloudTrail events like anyway. We pull all those events, and so even if there's no cost associated with that particular thing, you can still find it, you can still index it, you can still see it. So the next thing I want to talk about real quick is this workloads construct. So when folks first started using AWS, right, it was basically an infrastructure play. And they said, hey, I want a data center in the cloud. I don't want to have to rack and stack servers anymore. I don't want to have to wait for stuff to get off the loading dock before I can actually provision a machine. This is insane. I'm going to use AWS as an infrastructure play. And that a lot of the early kind of cloud best practices are all set up around that construct of it's a data center in the cloud. So we treat it like a data center. We need to have all of this chargeback and tagging policies and all of these things in place in order to ensure our cloud data center is well built, and we have all these rules, and we build VPCs and subnets and all of this stuff. And that's great, but now we have to kind of wait a little bit on the cloud folks to kind of provision things and make things work correctly and build kind of this VPC world. And that doesn't really scale. We don't really want to build 8,000 VPCs or 8,000 accounts for various initiatives and that sort of thing. And as usage of AWS has grown, what we found is that you actually do want to have a multi-account strategy. It's not just one account with a giant VPC in it, your data center in the cloud. That actually doesn't make a lot of sense for agility. And when AWS releases, what are we up to, like 170 services or something like that, with new ones coming out every day?
Well, the week's just getting started, John.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, we haven't had.
And this is a 3-week thing now. So.
Yeah.
So when you have that, though, if I want to go use Lambda to do something, or if I want to use Kinesis, or if I want to use any of these other tools, I shouldn't have to go build a giant VPC to make that happen. That doesn't make any sense, right? And so used to be everybody talked about kind of, I want to get infrastructure in the cloud, I want to move my data center to the cloud, or I want to even move like a small grouping of servers to the cloud, but it was still, I got to build this DC in the cloud. Well, now what people talk about all the time is I want to get this workload into the cloud, right? It is shifted from being this infrastructure play to being this kind of objective-based thing. I want to take this service or this product or this concept that I want to deliver. I want to package it up into a unit, and I want to put it in the cloud because that allows me to be agile and fast around what I'm doing. And I shouldn't have to build a giant VPC if I'm only going to put 3 services up there, right? And so we're talking about workloads and workload as a construct. And AWS is a workload construct. And so what we said is, okay, we're going to kind of reimagine this kind of cost world around workloads instead of around the account, because most people who are in AWS or most operators of the system don't actually care about what the entire account is costing them. They don't actually care about, what business unit A's cost is. They care about what their cost is. And so workloads provides a way for you to do a couple of things. One is it's a grouping of AWS resources. So when you create workloads, you do it kind of like an S3 bucket. You give it a name, and then you say, hey, what accounts do these resources live in? that I want to pull from, what type of workload is this, what type of lens we want to use, and well architected is the lens that gets used a lot for these types of things. And then we build a query, and the query says what region, what services, what VPCs do these resources live in, and then you can select a bunch of tags. And so you imagine I might have a tag that's like app A, and any resource that's tagged app A belongs to me, right? Or I might have a CloudFormation stack or something like that. And so what you can do is you can actually build that query and create a workload. And when you do, you get a drilled down view of just your workload, your resources that you care about. So we can see, for instance, this particular query pulls in some of our dev stuff. You can see our MediaWiki stuff in dev and that sort of thing. And we can even see, again, right, compliance issues about these particular resources from a well-architected perspective. And we can start to get a view of the world that we care about, right? And so we can see not only our well-architected summary on this particular workload, but we can also attach things to our workloads. So I might attach the architecture diagram, for instance, for this particular workload. I might attach a troubleshooting document to this particular workload so that when folks come in, they know kind of what's going on with it. I can create a budget for just this individual workload. So I can say, hey, let's do a budget here and notify me when we are 2% above, and I'll just look in the app. I don't need to see it. Whoops. Go away. Bad demo. No donut. Let's see. Are we deploying? Yeah, we may be deploying now. So you can create individual budgets for your workloads, so you can see those. They look just like the budgets from the account level perspective anyway. So, and you see the individual resources, right? So the other cool thing you can do from this is you can actually conduct a well-architected review on your assessment on your workload now. So I've created a workload, it lives here, and I can actually run in here and run a well-architected review, like literally run the AWS well-architected review from here. And this is where some of our auto-discovery stuff starts to come in. So let's say you're running, you build a workload and you want to sit down, you want to tabletop it, right? You want to go through the exercise of a well-architected review. We let you do that. And let's say you start to find problems inside of this well-architected review. You can actually go and, again, go out and create a JIRA ticket. Hey, we need to go fix this, right? I can look at the description for this. I can attach individual resources to this. I can make recommendations. So maybe I'm the internal auditing agency for my organization, and I can go through and do this, and I can add notes and create recommendations for this sort of thing. And then we allow you to dump a report out of this, right? And so you can go in and run your kind of well-architected review. Now, this lives in nOps, right? This isn't AWS. This is lives inside the tool, but this gives you a way to really get a handle on just the world that you care about. And since it's query driven, it's dynamic. So if something auto scales, if some new resource gets launched, anything that's tagged or anything that matches the query that you've built gets automatically added to your workload. So when somebody accidentally writes some auto scaling that auto scales 55 instances instead of 5, we can see that, and we can immediately notify people about that sort of thing. So I think that's one of the cool things about workloads in general, and kind of recontextualizing the world around workload, and how, again, we want to shift left. We want to enable people to really be able to see the outcomes of their actions and how those actions affect the finance policy in their organization, and how I can build architecture that is fast, is reliable, but it's also, cost efficient. It cares about cost. So maybe cost efficient is not the right word. Maybe it's like cost knowledgeable, if you will, and how that should be just part of the day-to-day of operating an application in AWS. What does it cost, right? Hey, yeah. AWS is going to change whatever instance type or introduce some new service. How does that affect the cost of my application? Could I re-architect and get better performance at a lower cost, right? A lot of people will build architecture in AWS and let it run, and they won't change their architecture until AWS retires those instance types, right? Until you get the little email that says, hey, we're about to destroy this piece of hardware and decommission it, people will let their application just run. Oh. And if you have this cost information front and center, it's in your face, you can go, wait a minute, I bet I could re-architect this application and just change the instance types on the next deploy and save money and increase my performance, right? But if you don't have this kind of view of the world where you're looking at your workload all the time, it's kind of hard to start that conversation.
So John, Randy, we've got about 3 minutes left with you all. Everybody on stream, please stick around. We're going to have Scott Weber right after, following all the nOps goodness that we've just gotten. We do have a question from chat from Stock Signal. Are there any other lenses or options for workloads? Well architected is great. Anything regarding HIPAA, PII, CJS?
Oh, there you go.
Anything like that? Let me transition back to your screen. Here we go.
There's a couple of things there. We've had this heavy focus on the kind of well architected for some time, but you might have noticed a couple of other options that are here from a lens perspective around HIPAA and SOC 2. And what this does is actually recontextualize the assessment questions that get asked inside of the report. We also have a readiness report. So these readiness reports basically take the existing rule set and what we call our expanded rule set, things that aren't well architected necessarily, but are just kind of good practices to have, and allows you to visualize them in the context of a SOC 2 or HIPAA. So if I look at our readiness report, you can see like this is the way that HIPAA identifies these particular things, right? And we see the risk analysis and that sort of thing. So this allows us to write rules and do these things and then put them in the format that your auditor wants to see, right? Or put them in the format that IA needs to see or that sort of thing. So that allows people to have a different contextual view of their workload or their environment.
Super cool. And so, again, typing straight here, Randy or John, where would you tell somebody to go to get started? Let's say I want to go spin up nOps this afternoon.
Yeah, so we do offer a free trial. So go over to the nOps.io site, and you'll find click on the free trial button, and you'll be offered up either a partner version or an end customer, depending on your particular interest area. So that's a great way to get started, and you get a full function version of the product, and we can handhold you through that process. There's also a lot of great assets there. I'd encourage people to look at the webinar with Uber previously. There are some other great assets there, but I think if you liked what we just walked through, what John kind of pointed out, let's go get busy in the product and get yourself a trial.
There you go. Maybe even get to meet John. Who knows?
There you go.
Maybe.
Who knows? If you're lucky. You're very lucky. But we were very lucky to have you all today, and I really want to thank you both, Randy and John, for coming on and showing us about nOps. We're about to now transition over to Scott Weber, APN Ambassador, so stick around. We're going to be right back. Just got to get him set up and situated, and then we will come back live. Be sure to go to nOps.io. I dropped the link in chat, and John, Randy, I hope we'll see you again on Howdy Partner, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Fantastic. Appreciate everybody's time and appreciate you guys bringing us in. Thanks very much.
All right.
Great.
Thank you both.
Hey, real quick, there's two little questions in the Slack chat there. Yes, we support foundational technical review, right? FTR stuff. That's supported in the product as well. So if you need to do that lens, you can. And then as far as new lenses being added to the product, we're constantly trying to keep in sync with AWS from a lens perspective. And we want to be able to support all these different lens options.
Very nice.
Solid.
Very nice. All right. Stay tuned. We will be right back with Scott, and we'll kick things off with reInvent topics. So thanks again, John and Randy. We'll see you soon.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Thanks a lot.
And we're back with Scott Weber, APN Ambassador. So if you're just joining us, this is AWS Howdy Partner, the only show dedicated to partners in the APN. And we are very lucky to be doing most of these episodes with an APN ambassador on the end of it. Andrew, do you want to kick things off? Ask Scott about that program and who he is.
Yeah, Scott. So if you don't mind telling the viewers kind of what the APN ambassador program is and kind of how you got involved, I think that'd be a great start.
Yeah, hey, definitely, guys. Andrew and Ann, thanks for the opportunity to come and talk to everybody today. So I'm Scott Weber. I'm the Vice President of Cloud Solutions at EagleDream Technologies. We're a premier consulting partner based in upstate New York. The APN Ambassador Program is really unique. I think I've been part of the program. It'll be 2 years and coming up here in March. It's a group of very like-minded people that are just really passionate about AWS. One of the unique characteristics is we all work for consulting partners. And so it's a program to pull together sort of the top representatives from the different consulting partners around the world. There's roughly, I think, between 150, 180 ambassadors globally. There's about 30 in North America. And EagleDream's lucky to have 3 ambassadors actually on staff. And we get recognized because of our deep understanding of the AWS ecosystem, our ability to work with customers, but very importantly, like you get into the program by being recognized by a partner solution architect inside of AWS, and them sponsoring you into the program because they've seen how you've been able to help a customer. We also get sort of ranked and graded on, how much we're doing to represent AWS, things like, something like this that I'm doing tonight, or doing a webinar, or, back when we could do things in person, doing like a multi-customer immersion day in person, or we would do things that we called tech talks, where we'd go around different parts of the country, city to city, and do presentations. So or blog posts on our websites, or contributions to open source projects are all ways that we get recognized within the community. And you have to have sort of a critical mass of that to also get into the program. But it's a great way for those of us to meet and talk and help each other out too. So we have a Slack channel where we hit some corner case or something with a customer, we can bounce ideas off of each other as well. And so it's an honor to be, in this program and be recognized by AWS, and the community for what we're able to bring to the table.
Nice. And then just a quick follow-up question. So, obviously a lot of consulting partners are in the process of building out AWS practices, or some partners already have an established AWS practice, right? And so what advice would you give to someone that's really interested in this program and really wants to be an APN ambassador?
Yeah, so it's, it really comes down to, I think, a couple things. Work with your PDM and your partner development solution architect, if you have one. But, establish a little bit of a critical mass of who you are out there. So whether it's through blog posts with you, either on your own blog or through your company, helping develop case studies about customers and how you've been successful with customers on AWS. Heavy focus definitely on things that you've done to help your customers, and then just be passionate about the brand, your brand, and AWS. The other thing you have to have is you've got to have, I think it's at least one professional level certification and one or more associate or specialty certifications as another entry. Because again, they're going after those with deep knowledge in the platform, and then chances are, you start doing these things, or you're doing joint events with AWS, maybe a joint immersion day, you're going to get noticed. You're going to get noticed by those partner solution architects, or you're submitting maybe a customer for co-funding, right? You're going to develop those relationships, and those are the things that are going to enable you to get recognized internally in AWS and into a program like this.
Yeah, no, that's all advice. And then one other question I had was, when we talk about partners, you think about this large ecosystem of ISV partners, you have consulting partners, but But one thing that we haven't really talked about on the show is like what it really means to be specifically an APN partner. Could you maybe expand on that piece a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So we've been in the APN system since about I think it was April 2015 is when we as EagleDream really got involved with APN. I've been with EagleDream since the summer of 2014. I was brought on to help build out a healthcare data analytics platform in AWS. It was a greenfield opportunity for a startup. And it was interesting because we got recruited into the APN network by the sales agent for New York State at the time, the AWS account rep for New York State, because he saw us doing some interesting things. And, so we then, moved through the ranks. We went from being sort of that select or registered tier. 2 years later, we made it to advanced tier, working on developing more certifications for our team. And then just before reInvent last year, we actually made it to premier tier level of partners. And I mean, we're one of 47 in North America that's premier tier. That was a huge honor for us to be able to get recognized by AWS into that select group. But it's a journey, and it really is about the journey to get there. Being a partner, there's a huge number of partners in the ecosystem. I mean, I think the last numbers I heard it was approaching like 60,000 partners globally in the partner ecosystem, on both the consulting partner and the ISV side. From a consulting partner standpoint, I think it's really important that it's very easy to want to be everything to everybody, but AWS would talk about superpowers, and I think it's really important from a consulting partner standpoint is build your niche and expand then out from that niche, but be really good at something and in the ecosystem, and then get critical mass on that, and things will start to grow. And so our critical mass was really the idea of cloud native custom applications built out inside of AWS. And bringing that software first view into what we were doing inside AWS. We like to say, around the office that AWS is just an API call away, right? Because everything in AWS is an API call, right? So if you can write the software to glue these things together, you can do some pretty unique things. And that's where we got our start. And now as a premier tier partner, obviously we do, the migrations, the lift and shifts, the assessments of what it's going to look like to move into AWS. But we're also doing a lot of things where we're leading with application modernization. So taking somebody's legacy .NET application, .NET stack that's running on IaaS and SQL Server, and helping them modernize that to like .NET Core 3 that now we can run on Linux containers. So now we can go from running on IaaS on Windows servers to running on Linux containers on top of Fargate. And maybe we can get them to move the backend over to a Postgres server. Just getting rid of IaaS and going to a Linux container front, for your application code is like a 60 to 70% cost savings for a customer.
I think you're showing your hand a little bit, Scott. With we haven't started talking about the reInvent announcements yet, but I could guess probably one of them that you really liked. I wanted to ask real quick, Scott. I think a lot of people are maybe unfamiliar with the APN. We have a lot of nomenclature in the APN, right? We've already dropped a couple terms. We said ISV, we said consulting partner, right? ISV is like what nOps is, right? The partner that was just on previous to you. It's some of these SaaS offerings. It's a software package that is built to be reusable across the board, right? Like it's not custom built. There's nothing there. We've had a lot of ISV partners on Howdy Partner. We've not had very many consulting partners. Can you tell us, it may seem totally obvious, but for somebody who's never heard of a consulting partner, what is it that you all do? How do you differ in this partner network?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the consulting partner is, we actually work with some ISVs that run in AWS. So what we bring to the table is, how do you move that workload onto AWS? How do you change the way that you work? How do you do DevOps natively inside AWS? So we're helping those customers that are trying to figure out what is AWS, how do we leverage it for our business, how do we make it a transformational tool for our business, and so we get into a lot of, how do we secure it, right? Security and price are still usually 1 and 2, right, on the cloud in general and on AWS. So when we look at, we help customers understand, like, here's the potential cost savings of moving into AWS, and how are we going to secure your workload and probably maybe be even more secure than you were running in the data center. So we're, as a consulting partner, helping our customers understand how to change their business, how to strategically change what they're doing and bring that new workload into AWS, and at the same time gain these huge ROI gains in some cases. Maybe they can just move faster as an organization. How to adopt even new technologies as you're making that move, and some of those new technologies, again, allow you to move faster or do things differently, more securely. So a lot of it is around just helping customers understand AWS. Like I sometimes like to say, the alphabet soup that AWS can seem to somebody new. Everything's a 3-letter acronym, right? I mean, we've all been there. It's EC2, VPC, NAT gateways, and those are the basics, right? So, I call it demystifying the cloud sometimes, right? And helping them understand the art of the possible. What could you do inside AWS? What is it going to enable you to do by moving your applications and your business into AWS?
Yeah, I always like to say, one of the big differences between ISVs and consulting partners, the ISV, their biggest offering is the software. A consulting partner, their biggest offering is usually the people at the
Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it. Yep.
Cool. Andrew, what's next?
Yeah. So with that said, with reInvent going on, what have been some of your favorite announcements or sessions that you've been able to attend for the last week or so, considering that reInvent's 3 weeks now instead of 1?
Yeah, I mean, getting used to it being 3 weeks long is it has been interesting. So, I mean, we've heard from Andy and we've heard from Doug Hume on the partner side. Look, Andy's keynotes. The keynotes are always a favorite of mine. I've been going to reInvent since 2015. So getting in and seeing, the keynotes to me is always, is always a great time. So, in Andy's keynote from last week, there was a lot of announcements and they're all great. But the one, there's a couple that really, from the type of work that we do and the customers that we're helping, really, I latched onto. And I think maybe one of the biggest ones is the release of Babelfish for Postgres, right? Again, we're doing a lot of work with customers that are still running SQL Server, whether it's standard or enterprise, and that's a huge cost investment for those customers. I think the ROI numbers I'm getting, like, off of SQL Server Enterprise to Postgres is something like 90% return, right? So if there's ways that we can help these customers get off of these proprietary databases and into, an open source database, that's great, because as many customers as we help modernize their code bases, the databases are always where all the inertia is to make that move. So Babelfish was a great, I'm really looking forward to diving into that with a couple of customers. We actually have a couple of customers already in mind that we're going to take the idea of it to and see if they could leverage it. The GP3 disk types that were released, I've heard some other people, blogging about it and been reading about it. It's like, run to it, right? Let's just get over there now. It's not for boot disks yet, but any extra disks that you have attached to your machines, it sounds like an awesome upgrade. Sort of in that database realm, Aurora Serverless V2. We've been doing a little bit of Aurora Serverless with our cloud native application development that we do. I mean, we usually start with Lambda or containers on top of something like Fargate, really trying to embrace the serverless. And so Aurora Serverless has been cool. Really looking forward to digging into what the V2 can bring us. And then Lambda, we've got probably 4 major application builds going on right now that are all based upon Lambda. So the idea of getting to per millisecond billing, I think that's really, that's a big deal. I also, think that Lambdas are getting bigger. A little bit of me is like, let's not let that lead to, not good coding practices, right? Because I always love Lambdas being small and, quick, but I do, we're working with some customers right now where they're trying to do some heavy duty image processing that we were ready to make the switch to implement that in containers because we couldn't get the memory footprint we needed with Lambda. But now that we can run in 10 gigabyte, memory footprints, we could continue to do that workload.
I've seen a couple of our serverless heroes tweet out too that, hey, I just ran a container in Lambda and I feel a little dirty about it. Right?
Yeah. I can understand that one, because there's a lot of customers that have a lot of investment in Docker and containers and making it easier to do that deployment. But yeah, for the purists, for those serverless heroes, yeah, I can see that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was super excited with the container announcement in Lambda personally. I've been a long fan of Docker. I try, like you said, Scott, I try and build serverless first when I can, right? But it's not the answer for everything, right? It's just
exactly. You run into cases where containers just make sense. And I think it's going to be really interesting. I was able to attend a talk last week on the EKS Anywhere, and really, trying to get deeper into the Kubernetes ecosystem. We've done a lot with customers on top of ECS, and then ECS on top of Fargate. So one of the things I'm challenging myself with is just getting deeper into the Kubernetes area and understanding that more. But this idea that we can take ECS or EKS and now bridge from on-premise to AWS, I think is going to be
a huge one.
Yeah, that's huge.
We had a quick correction from our friend Jared. Actually, Jared's an AWS employee here too. He works a lot on game day. Actually, I think primarily on game day. But he says GP3 is now supported for boot volumes. All this stuff is happening so quick; it's hard to keep up.
That's awesome.
And if you have any issues updating a boot volume to GP3, please log a support case. So
nice.
Yeah.
Good. So more people will be running through it. Very cool. Very cool.
Sorry. Go on, Scott.
Yeah. So we're starting to see more and more workloads around data lakes. So again, doing custom application development, everybody's got data, tends to lead us into conversations about data lakes. So the Glue Elastic Views, I thought that was really interesting. I was able to get into one of the sessions last week about it to really understand what's going on under the hood there. I think that's going to help a bunch of our customers out, because you always get into this, like, where do I put the data? And now I got to move it from this database to that database because, full text searches are easier in Elasticsearch than in Dynamo. And so I think that's going to be a really interesting one for our data scientists to start to wrap their heads in, and our data lake people to understand how to leverage that. We do a lot with Glue anyway. So I think it's going to be a natural progression for us. The data lakes then usually lead into, like, somebody wants to do something with AI and ML. We're in a couple projects right now where I think the new SageMaker CI/CD stuff is really going to enable us to move faster, because that was sort of like, there was a lot of different opinions and ways, and usually it involves step functions, or sometimes you had to do Kubeflow depending upon what the model looked like and how you wanted to do it. I was able to get to a session on the ML ops, and they talked about it. We actually got one of my data scientists looking at, can we use the new SageMaker CI/CD things just to help this one project that we're working on. And so, it looks exactly in some ways where we were headed, trying to do things with step functions, sort of has that same concept for building out some of these flows. So we're really excited to see where that could go.
Nice. So I think that's most of the things from Andy's keynote, right? There were some other announcements, but I think that's a great highlight. One thing I want to talk about Doug's keynote on Thursday too with you, Scott. But one of the things that I don't think we've heard a lot about, personally, from a lot of the media channels I've consumed at least, is good sessions to go to. Like, what sessions have you seen, Scott, and which sessions would you recommend checking out on the reInvent platform?
Yeah. So one of the things I was really excited to see get announced at the end of the week last week was that you could stream all the sessions from last week over the weekend on demand. So my schedule wasn't the most open for making it to some sessions last week, but there's a Lego.com and serverless session. I guess it's really a continuation of how Lego.com started their serverless journey last year at reInvent and building on where they went. Really interesting because of the adoption that they've made of EventBridge. So I think EventBridge was announced last year. They have jumped in heavily on that. Really well done. Actually, one of the presenters works at Lego and is one of the serverless heroes, actually. And so really nice, nicely presented deep dive on how, Lego.com is using serverless to drive all of their workflows, how they're incorporating step functions and EventBridge through the whole system. It was a great talk. So anybody that's interested in serverless, I'd highly recommend that one. I mentioned I saw the one on the glue elastic views to make it a lot more real, what you can do with that. One of the announcements that wasn't in reInvent, but was just before reInvent, was around the network firewall service and really understanding how we can incorporate that in customer workloads. Because as we move more and more enterprises, that idea of bringing, a virtual, whether it's Palo or Fortinet or some other, virtual device that is their, typical on-prem firewall into AWS, those can always be a challenge, running those as, virtual devices on top of EC2, but to have the native network firewall now, there's a great session on different ways to integrate that to your VPC topologies with transit gateway and stuff. So definitely recommend that. David Mann's session on the transformation, migration, and governance, that was an hour-long session. Got to see about the first half an hour of it. I need to go back and finish it. But I thought it was great to talk to, those that are trying to really strategically transform their organizations into being cloud first and into AWS. So those were some of the top sessions that I thought were really good. I'll be honest, I'm still looking through this week's the releases for this week to see what I can get on the calendar. I was doing a little bit last night, but I love the fact that we can go back and watch them now on demand. That helped a lot.
Yeah, these sessions are getting still put out. There's still more sessions to come that have yet to be released. I think I saw actually one session that I'm really excited to go watch. I think it just went up on demand on Friday as well, was Abby Fuller's. I love all of Abby's talks, and I think she's doing a security-focused talk this time. I haven't seen it yet, but I expect really great things from her. So definitely check out that one.
Yeah, that would be a good one for sure. I've seen some of her talks in the past around containers and stuff, and yeah, that would be a great one to see.
Yeah, I think it's actually on she's talking specifically about Nitro too, so I think that'll be really interesting. Yeah, I definitely have to go back and I have to go back and rewatch that one too. Yeah, that one's gonna be really cool. So let's look forward to that.
Definitely. Doug made some really, we've been talking about partners and what it means to be a partner, and I thought Doug had some really interesting, announcements that for partners. The one, so we, in helping customers build a lot of solutions on top of AWS, we end up working with a lot of SaaS, software as a service type customers, or customers are trying to convert to a SaaS type model. So the new open source stuff around AWS SaaS Boost, I think, I haven't had a chance to dig into it, but I'm really interested to see what that framework is going to look like to help, jumpstart customers as they're moving in that direction. And there were some interesting new competencies that I think are interesting that he announced. It seems odd to say that you're going to have a mainframe migration competency to AWS, but that's one of the things that we as consulting partners run into a lot. I mean, I have multiple customers right now, running AS400s is the core of what their business does. And so, I think that's going to be a really interesting area for the right partners to get recognized in, and helping these customers move, what can really hold some customers back from a modernization journey, right? There's a huge amount of investment there, and quite frankly, there's not a lot of experience left in an organization around that environment, right? So, I thought that was really interesting. The energy competency that's coming out in 2021, and I think that's going to be really interesting. We're seeing more in our own practice, more energy companies, looking at migrating things into AWS. So I think it's, that one looks interesting too as we start to identify. And then map for SAP. SAP, is a huge thing, but it's a huge win to be able to get that into AWS. And I don't think there's a better platform out there for running SAP and HANA on top of with the massive memory footprints that HANA needs. So, that we've got a map program specifically for large SAP environments now, I think is a good thing overall for the community.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there was what was it? I forget, something in hospitality competency that launched too.
Yeah, there's a travel and hospitality competency now. So, that's, we've done a little bit of work with some in travel and hospitality, and, their needs, you want to talk about needing scalability. I mean,
right.
One of the customers that we were working with is they were involved in sort of ticketing for multiple national airlines. And when you start to talk about, okay, scalability of Thanksgiving's coming, Christmas is coming, and, being able to elastically scale up and down and deal with the load, we actually used over the summer. So last year, Code Guru Profiler was announced at reInvent, right? So there's actually a blog post from one of my principal cloud solution architects that went up on the partner blog. I think it was the partner blog, or maybe it was the AI and ML blog, where we actually used Code Guru Profiler when it was still in preview to help this customer with a scaling issue, and they were in the travel and hospitality space. And I mean, it immediately pointed out where they had some optimizations to make in their Java code, and huge improvements over just some quick hits with that Profiler was able to point out.
Yeah, I think we just got preview support for Python in Code Guru too. I think I can't remember when that came out, but
yeah, that just came out I think in Andy's talk. So I'm glad to see that we've now got Python. We're doing a lot of Lambda development in Python, so I think it'll be as we add more and more languages. I hope we get .NET soon. We're doing a lot of C# and .NET. So it'd be great to get that one too, because there's a lot of, now that .NET's open source and stuff, we're seeing a lot of interest in the community of, continuing down that .NET code base, but modernizing it to run on, more modern architectures.
Totally. Yeah. I that is on my wish list too. Give me some C#, right? Yeah. So I'm trying to think of, there are some marketplace announcements as well. Some of the things coming out of marketplace are pretty interesting around licensing and things like that.
Well, and especially for consulting partners, this idea that you can offer ProServe via the marketplace.
Oh yeah.
That's going to be, I think, a really interesting thing, as the idea of being able to package up ProServe alongside a software solution. So I think that's going to look, I'm going to be really interested to see where that goes over the course of the next year.
Okay, so talking through some of the things that have already happened, pretty interesting, but what are you looking forward to, Scott? Which keynotes are you most anticipating? We've got the machine learning keynote tomorrow. Which other ones are you really excited about?
Yeah, so I mean, I think machine learning is going to be great. I'll be watching that one. I think we've had a lot of early adopters in machine learning, but I think we're finally starting, in my opinion, to see critical mass in the industry of people, really starting to gravitate towards that machine learning. And whether it's sort of that top layer of services, I say, where it's just like that API call away, you don't really have to train a model, or it's very easy to train a model with things like services like, forecast, where you feed it your time series data, it quickly builds a model, or something like recognition, or comprehend, transcribe, those services that are that API call away to leverage, right? Or as we get deeper into the ecosystem, where now we're going to use SageMaker, right? I think we're definitely seeing the customers asking more and more questions about that. I think it's also helping that it's getting built into things like QuickSight. So QuickSight has built-in AI and ML capabilities now, really cool. Forecasting, generating a whole dashboard. I mean, the machine goes and generates the whole dashboard for you now and writes the narrative around it. So I'm really looking forward to the keynote around that tomorrow. But I think my favorite always is Werner's keynote coming up next week. I love watching Werner talk about technology, right? And the passion that he brings around that. And when he starts to talk about the really difficult problems that he's seeing customers solve in the technology, with AWS technology. So that's got my focus for next week is getting into Werner's and watching Werner's keynote and seeing what he's going to share with us this time. I was able to catch a couple of his summit addresses over the summer. He had one where he was talking about, where did CDK come from, right? And the fact that it really came out of Amazon.com and how that team inside Amazon.com saw a need for something to be very modular with CloudFormation. And now we have the CDK because of it. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to Werner's. As to what's going to get announced, I always head into reInvent season. I'm like, what else is going to come out? But then you always walk away amazed at the releases that are there. Even around AI and ML. Last year the AI will go figure out its own model, right? So, that idea where you just hand SageMaker, a CSV file and say, well, tell me what's special about this one, column of numbers, and it'll go build you a model to derive to that value, So I'm always amazed at what's going to get announced. I wish I had a crystal ball to know, but definitely looking forward to both AI, ML, and then Werner's next week.
Yeah.
Sure.
You gonna grab the question out of Twitch, Andrew?
Yeah. I think we're both thinking the same thing. I beat you to it. We have a question in chat for you, Scott. So Stockton asks, I work around a few MSPs who really don't recognize the value of cloud. What's your advice to push them to potentially join the APN? They would have to expand their SOPs and have additional people to train to the professional level. What would be your sales pitch?
And let's MSP is managed service provider.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So it's probably, what we call more of a legacy managed service provider. They might be providing support for servers in the data center and, things like that. And so it's interesting, right? Because those types of companies have to start to step outside of their comfort zone, right? Because you're going to be working with, tools and technologies that in some ways you've been competing with. But, I think it's a necessary thing for those MSPs to start to branch out. I think what they're going to find is it's not that different, right? And they might then be able to help some of their customers. If they've got a customer running VMware and they're the managed service provider for that environment, they might be able to take that customer VMware Cloud on AWS, right? It's going to be a directly transferable skill set for that MSP. And look, there's MSPs in AWS, right? There's an MSP competency for consulting partners. Last I checked, there was just over 100 companies that had it. But that's a pathway for an MSP to start, what I'll call a more traditional MSP to start thinking about the value and how they can move into the cloud. Because, I think as Andy pointed out in his talk, there's only 4% of all potential IT spend right now in the cloud. So the MSPs, still have a lot of business, but we're going to continue to see that shift. And I'll contend you could still be on the leading edge at some level of the shift into the cloud, if you start going down that path and start headed that way.
Yeah, I know that we have dedicated, SAs at least that help with these MSP practices as well. One of our own, I think he's since moved on from this job, but Adrian San Miguel, here local to Austin, where I am, was a long time MSP, SA and really helped build out a lot of practices with a lot of different partners. I think he's since moved to working on Outposts at this point, so he's still famous. You can still see him on Outpost videos and things. But yeah, we definitely have dedicated resources to helping these MSPs, right? So
yeah, and I think that's an important thing. Once you start to get into the whether an ISV or a consulting partner into the partner ecosystem, AWS wants to help you grow your business. There's lots of enablement there. There's some sessions. So I was asked before reInvent to put together sort of sessions targeted at new AWS partners. And there was 2 sessions in particular that I called out for that that was really focused on that new partner. And it's all about understanding what's available in the ecosystem to help you, build out that base of skilled employees, from the free trainings that as a partner you can get access into, the co-funding programs that exist to help you differentiate yourself as you start to talk to customers. So there's a session in the Global Partner Summit category of sessions really around, how to leverage everything that's available to you as a consulting partner that's new into this space, and all those things that are available around you, from assistance on marketing to assistance on training to just knowing everything that's there, how to use the APN better, how to put in opportunities into the APN portal, into ACE better, so that you can be recognized for the work that you're doing.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? The APN is and I'd love to hear maybe some of your experience with this, Scott. We are running a little short on time, but getting into the APN is very, very simple, right? You just go sign up. Like, I have an APN account. It's not a real company or anything, but yeah, I went and signed up, and I'm now in the APN. It's what you do after that, right?
Yeah.
That really is the impact. And there are a lot of programs. You just mentioned one, actually, the ACE program. But that's, I feel like, some of the difficulty of being a partner in the partner network is figuring out which programs are best for you and which ones to invest time in.
Yep.
Kind of what your partner development manager and your partner solutions architect are there to help with too. But what's been your experience, Scott? What are some things that throughout these programs, which ones have been valuable to you? Which ones would you recommend if I were to go join the APN to go really look at?
Yeah, so I think if you're a really new partner, the training resources that are there to help bring your staff up to speed, and there's a lot of training there on different technologies, whether it's business or technical direction. So, one of the things that we do is all new hires into our organization have to take the technical essentials training from AWS, which is a couple-hour web-based training, and then we get them onto a pathway to, get cloud practitioner and then associate certifications, and eventually on to specialty or professional certifications. But a lot of that is there in APN for you to just go in and consume as you can. I think other things around the APN is there's a lot of these navigate programs now that can be like, there's a serverless one, a navigate program that'll take you through what it means to sort of put yourself down that pathway to get the service delivery designation. So going and getting things like competencies, that can take a lot of time. Start with some of the service deliveries. The bar to get into the service delivery program is only 2 customers, and neither customer needs to be a public case study. So if you can get 2 customers up and running, in CloudFront or on, a Lambda-based architecture with API Gateway, you've started down that path. And so these navigate programs exist to help you as a partner to find your way. I go back to choose like an area that you want to start in and expand out from that, and then work your way up to the competency programs. Competencies take a lot more effort to get into, but they're that next step up from being in getting the service delivery designations. And our first competency that we got was DevOps, and that came off with some advice from our PDM and a few other people at AWS, and it really did work out well for us, because so much of what we do is custom application development, software development, that those DevOps things were just ingrained in what we were doing already. The idea of CI/CD and those things. And so, as you get those competencies, then more doors and more opportunities open to you, because you get connected into the people that run the competency programs. One of the big ones for us besides DevOps was the Microsoft competency. Microsoft is an interesting one. There's 3 components to the Microsoft competency. One is SQL Server on AWS, and the second one is .NET application modernization, and the third is around sort of the productivity apps like SharePoint and Exchange. Well, we've qualified for both SQL Server and .NET, and so those are really, again, as we focus on helping customers modernize applications, that's a big focus area for us. So you have to pick and choose though, because we've taken a pathway much more to go after, I'll say, the broad-based competencies. We didn't go after a vertical, right? So like SAP is more like a vertical competency, and but no, play to your skills and your superpowers as you're trying to figure out how to navigate down that in APN. And then the ACE tool for the opportunity submission. The more that you can use that tool, the more you'll be recognized inside of AWS as somebody that's bringing business into AWS, right? That you're helping drive net new customers into the AWS ecosystem, or continuing to work with existing customers to do more on top of AWS.
Cool. Keeping in mind too, our time, I just want to make sure that we cover all the things that you want to cover about EagleDream too. You haven't really talked very much about EagleDream at this point, Scott. What do you want people to know? How should we think of EagleDream?
No, I appreciate that. So EagleDream, as I mentioned in the beginning, we're a premier tier partner. Where we do a lot is, I think you guys have sensed, is this idea of application modernization or clean sheet application development. Usually with a serverless first approach, start with Lambda, then go to containers on top of something like Fargate if need be. A lot of data lake work, but I'd like to say that we really like that idea of working backwards from the customer needs. So we want to understand where is the customer problem at and work backwards from that. I like to say that the technology will take care of itself, right? As long as we understand what is it the problem that the customer is trying to solve, or where is the pain point that they're having. We'll also like to help our customers leverage AWS as much as possible. So that might be finding the right co-funding program, right? As a partner, that's another thing that opens up as a way to help your customers. Is there's very, you get the really big migrations. That might be a map program. Maybe we can do a little bit of Windows, rapid migration if we're moving a smaller Windows workload into AWS. But, using those programs, we like to use those programs to help our customers. We're doing a lot of helping customers with like high compliance type workloads. We've done a lot of HIPAA in AWS. We were actually, I think, one of the first partners to launch a production customer on Control Tower. We were.
Oh, wow.
Control Tower got announced about, I think it was reInvent 2 years ago, and it went literally the day after it went GA, we implemented a customer into Control Tower inside of AWS, because we were literally talking to ProServe about doing the old landing zone approach. And then it went GA and we picked it up and ran with it. And now I think we've done like 15 or 20 different Control Tower setups for our customers. Because security has to be there from the beginning, right? That's what I really like about Control Towers. It really lets us understand the security and compliance state of our customers and start to build that directly into their AWS environment, whether it's through service control policies and guardrails, sort of more of those global config rules that can operate in Control Tower itself, or what are the config rules that we need to have deployed on every account creation, and now summing all that up into Security Hub, so they've got a single pane of glass across all of their AWS accounts to see what's going on in their environment. So we're now helping customers do large scale migrations into AWS, doing app modernization into AWS, and just clean sheet app builds into AWS. Some of the bigger data lakes we're doing is, IoT-like data ingestion into a centralized data lake, built upon S3, leveraging Glue and the other services. And I really enjoy, seeing the breadth of things that we're able to help our customers with, and going, project after project with our customers. We have a pretty good history of having multi-year relationships with our customers of, let's start with the first problem that you're trying to solve, and then how can we help you with the next workload that you want to put into AWS.
Cool. We got about, I'd say about 5 minutes left before we got to take off. Scott, it's been wonderful having you here. I have to say that right away. But Andrew, were there any other questions that you think?
So I kind of want to take a step back and talk about the concept of a journey to become a partner, right? And so one of the things that was announced earlier this week was the foundational technical review. And so typically, when partners are starting to get really serious about their partnership with AWS, that's one of the technical requirements that we look for in order to become an advanced partner, which obviously opens a lot more doors, like you talked about, right? Yep. So I just wanted to ask, just as a general question for folks that are preparing for that foundational technical review, or really any of the requirements to become an advanced tier partner, what advice would you give some of these folks that are in the process of preparing for, obviously hitting advanced tier and some of the other programs that we offer once you pass those, those what you call foundational requirements?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things have been instilled in us over the years. One, it's okay to say no. Like, so if AWS starts bringing you into opportunities and you just don't have the bandwidth to do that, it's okay to say no. Now, Andrew, that sort of deviated a little bit. You were more asking like sort of as you get, towards advanced here and stuff. The other thing is like, I believe being open and honest and saying what you are good at, but also admitting what you're not good at, right? So, you're not going to be an everything to everybody, as advanced here. You want to still have, I think, that sort of focus on what you're going to be really good at. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask AWS, as you're working with a customer, pulling in the AWS account reps and asking for your partner solution architects to help you with customers, I think goes a long way for, building those bridges to AWS and admitting when, hey, it's just not my thing, but I want to help this customer, right? So, we went through some things. I don't think they had that technical review when we made advanced tier, but one of the things that did happen was, the first project we were going to put in AWS, I mentioned, was a healthcare data analytics application. Mm-hmm. Believe me, in 2014, it was a completely different world when you tried to put healthcare into AWS. Right? The healthcare the AWS HIPAA white paper, I think, had 10 services in it. I mean, it was ridiculous, right? Nothing in RDS could hold HIPAA data, anything like that. But they told us before this project could go to production, you need to go through a review by a senior solution architect. And, I think that went amazingly well for us because we were very transparent. I think transparency in working with AWS and these types of technical reviews, whether it's a competency review, a service delivery review, being open and honest of what you did, how you did it, why maybe you didn't do something in a well-architected way. Maybe the customer pushed back against you. I've had those things like, why didn't you use multi-AZ RDS? Well, the customer really didn't want to pay for 2 SQL servers, which isn't, an insignificant amount of money, right? So, I think, taking your time and documenting and just understanding that you understood the customer needs, right, of why you did something is also really important in going through some of these reviews with AWS.
And then I guess my follow-up question to that is, how does EagleDream kind of come into the picture when partners or customers are kind of getting prepared for these types of reviews? How can EagleDream help some of these customers or partners that may be struggling with some of these conversations to move forward?
So, I mean, we're also a well-architected customer, or well-architected partner. So we're helping customers understand what it means to be well-architected inside of AWS. And, nice. I think that's really important for partners to really embrace is the idea of well-architected. I mean, now the tool is built into the console, so anybody can go in and start to take a look at it. But well-architected underpins everything that AWS is putting out there now. The competency checklists are all based upon well-architected. The service delivery checklists are all based upon core well-architected principles. So really getting in and understanding the concepts and the whys and some of the key best practices around well-architected specific, security is always a big one, right? And understanding, make sure that you know what's going on there. But really understanding, I think, well-architected is going to put you in good stead with your customers, but also going to help you when you get into these reviews with AWS, because it is a core thing that's being echoed everywhere in the partner ecosystem.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
Well, cool. I have to, I think, push us towards wrapping up. I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank you, Scott, for being on with us. It's been really insightful to have you here. I think it's really great to have a fresh perspective and an outside of AWS perspective too. Into what's going on at reInvent and the APN and the APN Ambassador Program. It's been really informative for me. So thank you, Scott.
No, thank you guys. It is great to have this opportunity, and I hope those listening got something out of it.
Well, if you're new to the show, we are AWS Howdy Partner. We are a show dedicated to all things APN and all partners in the APN. So each week we have partners join us to tell us about their solutions or the solutions that they've built with customers and how that can benefit you as you work in your own AWS accounts and your own AWS workloads. I had Andrew with me. I always point the wrong way, Andrew, always, no matter what.
This way?
Yeah,
This
I don't know.
way?
I have Andrew here with me, who is one of my favorite co-hosts. So thank you, Andrew, for joining us.
Thank you.
Like I said, if you're new to the show, we do this every Monday and Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific. And during reInvent, we've been meeting with some ISV partners to discuss their solutions. And then we've typically been having an APN ambassador join us, which today we've had Scott Weber. So please join us on Wednesday. We'll actually only have one partner joining us, and that partner will be New Relic. And I believe Mo will be hosting that one. So if you're a fan of the show, it's always a great episode when it's a Mo episode. I'll just say that.
100%. How could you not?
All right.
You know?
It's pretty great. We always sign off, Scott, the same way. We've got 3 sign-off phrases. I'm going to see if I can remember them all. And you get to choose which one we sign off with. So we've got happy trails. We've got y'all come back now, you hear. And we've got giddy up. I remembered them all, Andrew. Aren't you proud of me?
That's pretty good. I just forgot that third one.
Well, you know what? Since we're starting the second week of reInvent and the sessions are starting tomorrow, I think giddy up is the best way to end this one.
I think you're right.
That's solid.
All right, on the count of 3, we'll all giddy up and get on out of here. All right, so 1, 2, 3. Giddy up!
Giddy up.
We'll see you next time. Thank you all.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
everyone.